Please welcome first-time superhero JC Quintana. Today, he will showcase premiering content in his session, Don't Call It CRM Unless You Mean It. Please stick around after JC's session for a live Q&A.
DynamicsCon virtual conference. Welcome. Good to see you. I'm glad to be here. My name is JC Quintana, and I work for a company called CongruentX. Been doing this for a very long time. Don't call me old though. I'll get offended if you call me old. But I have been in the CRM industry for a large amount of time, and most recently with CongruentX, heading our value acceleration labs as lead for value accelerations for CongruentX. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope we have an opportunity to meet in person soon. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts. The chat's available during the presentation. I'll be able to answer your questions after the presentation is done. But please feel free to use the chat as much as possible to ask questions, make comments, stay engaged, so you can get the value that you're looking for from this particular presentation, which incidentally is entitled Don't Call It CRM Unless You Mean It. And if you'll forgive the interpretation of the JC Quintana Hulk, keeping with the DynamicsCon theme, was created by my children some time ago, and has been quite a lot of fun. So I thought I'd reuse it for our presentation today. So why don't call it CRM unless you mean it? Well, if you will indulge me, I want to take maybe a couple of minutes just to talk a little bit about this thing that we call by many different names. And throughout the presentation today, I want to talk about 7 very specific things that translate into how it is that we define this technology, whether it be Dynamics 365 for sales or Salesforce automation or whatever it is that you're calling it. We call it primarily CRM or customer relationship management. But why is it that many times we kind of miss the mark in delivering the very thing at the center of that acronym, customer relationship management, CRM, that we sometimes fail to deliver it both through strategy and the technology that we use in Dynamics today? So again, if you indulge me with a little bit of history, way back when I started in the CRM space, there wasn't such a thing as calling it CRM or even customer relationship management. Back in the days, Pat Sullivan, who was the original creator of ACT, he decided that he was going to take this software that we use for managing contacts and keeping track of people's names and their addresses and their basic information, things like their birth dates and their anniversaries and the name of their children, that we needed to take that application called contact management and move it into a space where technology could help us automate the way that we sold. It was never enough to just say, here's the individual, let me go sell to them. We needed to collaborate behind that relationship and follow a specific sales cycle that maybe technology could automate. So from 1987 to 1990, there was a big evolution from what we call contact management, and which we have to some extent in Outlook. So if you use Outlook contacts today, it is still very much contact management. That evolved into what we call Salesforce automation today around 1990. Many experts felt like that even though the databases that ran those systems were relational in nature, they really were not managing customer relationships. And so by 1995, we began to see people calling it customer relationship management. That's when the term was originally coined, although we can't quite pin it down to one specific person or company. And then the idea of customer relationship software or platform or tool or technology went further into the software as a service space. We began building mobile applications. And then, as you know, today, many of the applications that we use today that we call CRM are on the cloud. The very first application that was launched into the cloud was back in 2000, and it happened to have been in conjunction with the idea that CRM doesn't just exist in a system within a company, but that people interact with you in the social realm. And so With the emergence of cloud CRM also came the emergence of social CRM, and that term began to get a lot more acceptance. And of course, today, no matter what CRM system you use, you know that the average number of CRM emails that you may be getting could be coming from any of 140 different systems, because CRM as a technology has proliferated to the extent that we've got quite a few vendors out in the market. So the reason why I bring up the history of CRM a little bit is because somewhere around the year 2000, maybe around 2001, experts started talking about, and you probably have heard these numbers time and time again, experts started saying that 60, 70, 75, as much as 80% of technology projects like CRM resulted in failure. And companies started thinking about, well, if I have this thing called CRM implemented in my company, and I had to get funding for it, and I'm an IT professional, the chances are that if I call it CRM, then very likely people are going to find those numbers that say that CRM fail, and they're not going to fund my project, or people are going to have a bad feeling about it. And in fact, that is true. Behaviorally, we began to see around 2001, 2002, that because CRM has such a bad reputation and such a bad name, people started changing the name of what they call CRM. And initially, it was changing the name of the technology to something like a project, which I still highly recommend. For example, if I go out and implement Dynamics CRM, to make it engaging and make it unique to the company where I'm implementing CRM, it's fun to give it name. Project Success, Project Salesforce Acceleration, Project CRM Rocket, or Customer Relationship Rocket, whatever it was that got people excited about the technology. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to be enough for a lot of vendors in the market, and so we began to see people, again, out of fear that it would be associated, the name CRM would be associated with failure, we began to see vendors calling it something else. In the Microsoft world, we used the name XRM for a while, and then it kind of went back to being contact management, and then being just relationship management. And then we saw some vendors start calling it customer engagement. So if you've been in the CRM market for a while, or in the CRM space for a while, or if you've done in your work any kind of CRM work, you've heard it. You've heard people say, no, this is not called CRM anymore. It's called customer engagement. This is not called customer engagement anymore. This is now called customer trust management. This is not called CTM anymore. This is called customer service, customer centricity. And then most recently, we hear a lot of companies call it customer experience. So what is going on? What happened? Is there a valid justification for changing the name of CRM, and what should we really call it? And even more important than that, is it really the technology that fails? Should we really been changing the names all along because something was wrong with the technology? Well, there's only one, and I hope you find the humor in this, because there's one reason, and maybe one reason alone, why we decided to change the names of something that was so well suited for the technology, which is the name customer relation management. Why we changed to something else, and that is because we were trying to get away from issues with popularity and bad press. And the only other person that I can think of that has done that over the years, changed their name to align with issues in popularity and bad press, is P. Diddy. And what I mean by that is that this gentleman, who is extremely successful and extremely talented, started out in his childhood name as Puffy. And as you may have seen in the most recent Super Bowl ad, it went from Diddy to father to love to brother love. Now he's back to being called Diddy. And I find the similarity very interesting, because CRM has done exactly the same thing. Not because CRM is bad technology. As a matter of fact, if you take a minute to look at some of the numbers that I put on the screen, when you look at CRM as a technology, as a solution, as a system, on the top left, numbers are telling us that people haven't stopped purchasing it. As a matter of fact, as soon as a company hits 11, 12 people in their sales team, they'll go out and they'll buy CRM. And we find that at least 73% of companies are, on the business side, are saying we need to improve the customer experience and we want to leverage technology like CRM to do that. On the actual technology usage, we're seeing that people are not only using CRM or seeing CRM as a platform for success, but that they're taking that into the mobile space to increase productivity. And even base applications for the most part, when properly used, can achieve up to 41% increase in productivity for sales reps. We also know that it's not the ROI because the investment in CRM results for most companies in a pretty high ROI of $1 invested and about $8.71% in ROI on the average. So it's not the technology, it's not the lack of use, it's not the lack of popularity, it is not that it is not helping companies win customers, and it is not that it's not helping people keep customers. The truth is that the main problem with CRM and the main reason why we over the years have called it something else has a lot to do with people's willingness to adopt it. And numbers are showing us that on the one side, most of it is adoption, people not wanting to use it. Why? Because we're telling people that this is customer relationship management software. It is a relationship management tool, and yet they have difficulties finding the connection between what it is that they're doing in that application to really manage relationships. On the business end, we see people that are saying our entire strategy is built as a customer relationship management strategy and a success strategy, and yet I don't see the alignment of the value between the software and the business outcomes. And then we're also training people and implementing change management initiatives within the company that are helping us build stronger relationships, and yet this thing called customer relationship management is not actually helping us actually build relationships. So here's what I like to do for the rest of the time together. And we have maybe 20 minutes or so together to talk about that R at the center of relationships. What I would like to do is I want to take this approach from a couple of different perspectives. One, let me geek out on relationships for a little bit. As you saw in my introduction, my background is in psychology. I spent most of the last 5 years doing psychology research, specifically in the area of relationship development. And we found some really interesting things in the field of psychology that I think that you need to know. Secondly, let's also talk about it from the technology perspective. So if you don't mind, again, put your questions on the chat. We want to see those questions as we go. Let's look at each of these 7 things together, and let's address the chat questions together at the very end, because I want you to walk away from this not only understanding the expectations of what relationship development is, but where it is that we can leverage technology to supercharge the behavior of people and how people use CRM to actually accomplish it. So let's start with number 1. And that one is one that I think when we go back to why many relationships fail, we find that definition of value is where most relationships fall apart. So maybe we focus on customer relationships today, but this is applicable to not only personal relationships, but also our relationships with our partners and our relationships with our employees. So if you're on the call today and you're thinking in terms of managing partners, because in your business you sell through a partner channel or an alliance channel or through a distributor, then those are the relationships that we're talking about, and that's what CRM is managing. So for you, perhaps you call it partner relationship management. Maybe you're in an environment where you are in member services, and then members are the end user or the end customer, and maybe this is member relationship management. And perhaps you work in a CRM environment that caters to the needs of internal and external salespeople. So maybe to you, this is customer relationship management, although it may be internal customers and external customers. Regardless of who your customer is, when we say definition of value, we're talking about a really simple equation that says people have certain expectations of a relationship. They buy a product, they buy a service, And that's the outcome that they expect from the relationship. Anytime that you tell people what that costs, in other words, if I want to buy a hammer and that's what you do for a living, you sell hammers, and that hammer costs $10, then people look at the hammer, which is the outcome. They look at the $10, which is the cost, and they say, well, you know what? $10 to buy that hammer, it gives me the outcome I'm looking for. Perfect. Let's do business together. That may be a little more complicated, right? You may sell a service, you may sell a very high value item. The calculation is the same. And relationships always start in the same place. People always start by calculating what it is the value or the outcome that they're going to get from you. And they go through a definition process to figure out whether or not that value or that outcome is going to be worth it to them. Okay, perfect. We got number one. Again, put your questions in the chat because I want to hear your thoughts on that. And I also want to hear your perspective on how it is that you deliver value to your clients. All right, great. Now we got the relationship. It has been instituted. Both parties agree that they're getting what they need out of the relationship. They know what kind of relationship type it is. They know what kind of value, what exchange needs to happen in terms of time, effort, costs to get to that value, and all that has been formed and defined. We know the boundaries, we know the contractual obligations. But relationships don't stay there. There are also certain factors that have to do with who individuals and organizations are. And that has to do with culture, that has to do with values, that has to do with geographies, it has to do with a lot of different things that make people who they are. If you are a direct-to-consumer business or a B2C business, then likely you already know the customer segments that you're trying to win. And you know the kinds of people, and you know the geographies where you sell your product. That's what we mean by centricity. If we address the cultural and individual differences, what we call not only needs, but circumstances, characteristics, and capacity of individuals, after we've defined the value that they're looking for from us, then we have a win-win. Not only have we addressed the value they're looking for, but the specifics on how they expect that value to be delivered. Thirdly, and sadly, this is the one that, even though it is very important, we tend to shift completely to that, especially in the technology world, where we think engagement means emails and phone calls and chat, et cetera, et cetera. But engagement is the third component in relationship development or in relationship management. And as you can imagine, it has to do with all things communication. It has to do with engagement itself, connecting with people, and all the channels that you do that through. And if you can manage the relationship through the type of engagement people expect, the kind of engagement and communication your company uses to deliver your value to customers and maintain that value to customers, then the rest of the relationship cycle has a lot to do with maintaining that relationship, meaning that you're staying accountable to the things that you said you were going to do contractually. From an ownership perspective, you're actually doing what you say you were going to do. And then what we call service many times also has to do with the skill. In CRM, and going back to CRM systems specifically, we say that value definition, centricity are things that we do through processes and through the sales cycle. And engagement is things that we do throughout to both win the relationship and maintain the relationship. But things like accountability and service, we tend to delegate to our service organizations. And that's the reason why many times when we say accountability, or who is accountable for that, or who's fixing that mistake, or how do I build a knowledge database, we tend to think about service. Okay? So to wrap up this lesson on relationship development and relationship psychology, the last two elements have a lot to do with whether or not people believe that we're telling them the truth, that we're transparent in our interactions with them, and then lastly, experience, which defines expectations people have for what it feels and looks like to do business with you. I show you these 7 things because if you are thinking customer relationship management, and if that's what you're selling as a partner, as a vendor, or if that's what you're using and managing as an IT professional, or if that's what you're using as a sales, marketing, or support person, then if you are saying this is customer relationship, it should be managing each of those 7 things. Equating back to CRM, what should CRM be managing? Well, first, it should help you align and define what rewards and outcomes people are getting from your company and whether the relationship is equitable, meaning that it's not costing your company more money than it takes to give the customer what they want, and vice versa. That you're managing centricity. In other words, there's a place somewhere, a system of things that is giving you a direct insight into the characteristics, needs, circumstances of people, that it gives people a certain level of engagement they expect and nothing more, nothing less. But that is also a channel that you use for responding to people, discover their needs, communicating on a daily basis, and create value together. And also a system that you can look at that says we are keeping our promise, we are doing the right things, we can escalate issues, we can manage that through knowledge by either giving the customer knowledge or by gaining knowledge to help the customer, that is giving you analytics and insights into whether or not we are keeping the level of transparency and trust that the customers expect. And of course, this one, which is probably one of the most common words that we use today, which is whether or not we're delivering on the promise of customer experience. What is customer experience? Well, customer experience is looking at all the channels and all the places where we do business with the customer and asking the question of whether or not we give them the experience or the functionality, the ease of use of the product and service, use of access to information, and also we give them the feeling and emotional context that they were looking for when they came to us to do business with us. All right, great. If you were listening, you get an A on this very brief history of CRM, and you get another A on this brief explanation of what relationship looks like and feels like and means from a psychology perspective. So if we are going to call it not customer engagement, not customer transparency, but we're going to call it customer relationship, then you should be managing those 7 things. And in fact, one of the reasons why we've called it all those different things over the years is because we've gone in and tried to grab one aspect of relationship management and we've tried calling the whole thing relationship management. And I'll tell you what I mean. Number 1 is what we've called customer management for a long time. Number 2 is what we've called customer centricity for a long while. Number 3 is what we've called customer engagement for a long while. Number 4 and 5 is what we've called customer service for a long time. And number 7 is what today we're calling customer experience. And are they individual things? They are separate aspects of the same thing. So no, they're not customer relationship management on their own. They are 7 specific elements necessary to manage relationships. So what does that look like in the CRM world? If now I'm not talking about going out and doing just customer relationship management, but I'm really doing that in a CRM platform or in a CRM system, then what is it that I'm managing specifically and where does it live? So let me spend our last few minutes together talking about what true relationship management should look like in your CRM world. Of course, acknowledging and reminding everybody that no CRM implementation or no CRM technology adoption should ever exclude a strong customer relationship management strategy. Why? Because CRM, customer relationship management, and CRM, the technology that we use, are designed to enable one another. The strategy should be telling you the kind of customers that you're looking for, how to treat them, the relationships you expect to build, the value you expect to deliver, and then technology takes those things and accelerates them and it puts them into hyperdrive so that people can use CRM to make it more functional, more accessible, easier, more enjoyable, and emotionally connecting to actually do the things that the CRM strategy says you should be doing. So, what does a real CRM system look like? And how do we align those relationship things with system things? Well, if you're using a CRM system today, it's very likely that this is how you decided to implement a CRM system to begin with, meaning that you started thinking about who are our customers, who are our customer segments, who are we really selling to, who are we delivering value to, and what does that value look like for each of those different customer segments. You may have one product or one service that you deliver to multiple segments. Can you go into CRM and identify those? Can you go into a CRM system and find out how much time you're spending selling that value and maintaining that value for your prospects and for your customers? Are you delivering that value to the right leads? Are you segmenting those leads in a way that it makes it easy for you to communicate your value to them? And are you also using CRM to reiterate your value to your existing customers? And even more important than that, are you communicating that there is additional value to begin with? Because, as you know, it costs less to maintain an existing customer than it does to win a new one. In CRM, and this may be the system that you're using today, it may look something like this. And I know that some of you are maybe using the base platform for Dynamics CRM, but there are different functions that Microsoft has incorporated into the environment to make CRM more relational. And so we see applications like Relationship Analytics that include features like auto capture and Relationship Assistant and email engagement to go out to the world, to go out to the interactions in the emails that you have with people, in the team conversations you have about your customers, and it asks the questions that I just asked. Are these people the right people? Are we delivering value to them? Are we doing a good job to doing that? And you have a good system of knowledge about the value that you're delivering to your customers. In CRM, we also see things like the centricity alignment, meaning that you're not only asking if you deliver the right value to the right types of customers, but whether or not you are delivering that value, or if it costs more to deliver that value to people in a specific culture, in a specific geography. Maybe you have to change your product based on changes in language, in corporate culture, in the way people see the world or view the world. And once again, applications like customer insights are helping people identify the uniqueness of individuals, where they live, what they value, what they believe in, to make sure that application we call CRM is truly a relationship management application. We are also seeing the applicability of customer relationship strategy in CRM systems when it comes to engagement. And without any criticism, and I don't want anybody to think I'm criticizing any given vendor, any given company, but in my research, I found that most of the companies that say that they've built some form of customer relationship tool or mobile app or some type of customer relationship management dashboard are actually referring to engagement, meaning that if I go look at a dashboard that says I had 50 emails with this individual, and those 50 out of the 50 emails, that person responded 90% of the time, that means I have a good relationship with them. And that's just absolutely not true. The truth is that you have good engagement with that person. In fact, the tools we use today in CRM do allow us to understand the level of engagement that people have when we offer them a product, when we offer them a service. But engagement doesn't always translate to having a good relationship or a bad relationship. Maybe the person is inquisitive. Maybe they're trying to figure out what are good ways to create value with your company. And the level of engagement may be very, very high, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is very strong. So be very careful with tools like that. When you look for engagement in CRM and you look in your CRM systems to find whether there's engagement, the things that you're looking for are you meeting their expectations? What's happening within the engagement? Is there response? Is a customer inquiring, asking for more information? Are they responding to your offers? And this very important word, are they creating value with you? We know that the number one indicator of engagement is value co-creation, meaning that if we're having a conversation or engaging back and forth, when the other party stops seeing the value in responding to your surveys, responding to your email, talking about price, or anything else in CRM, that means that they're not willing to create value and they're not willing to engage, which means the relationship may be very, very weak, even weaker than you think it is. So keep that in mind. That's very important that even though we have three or four other add-ons to Dynamics CRM that are called relationship add-ons, the reality is that most of those help us see or gain visibility into the level of engagement that you have through a specific channel. It may not be an indicator of the strength of the relationship itself. So, talking about engagement, here's a great dashboard coming from Relationship Analytics. And I mentioned how this is a tool that captures email engagement, and it has a relationship assistant that kind of gives you a view into, again, not necessarily relationship, but the level of engagement that you have with a particular individual or with a particular company. So, what about the rest of it? What about things that have to do with the relationship, JC, that you brought up earlier? Those things are great. I do a lot of that through the sales cycle. But what about things like going into CRM to see things like accountability? How do I know that? Well, accountability is about owning your stuff, right? What you do when you make a mistake. And like I said earlier, most of the components of CRM that we use to manage accountability and knowledge and skill and mastery even are usually situated in service modules of CRM. That doesn't mean that that aspect of the relationship should not be looked at holistically with the other aspects of the relationship. In fact, the first three steps, definition, centricity, and engagement, help define the expectations of the relationship. And in the accountability and knowledge aspects of the relationship and transparency aspect of the relationship, that's when we get to follow through and make sure that that relationship meets those expectations and that we're maintaining trust with the customer. So, first one here, accountability, is about looking at CRM and discovering whether or not we're meeting our obligations, about whether or not the customer believes we're meeting our obligations, and whether or not we're staying true to the commitment that we made. Well, that could be a contractual obligation, or that could be just a promise that a salesperson made. And not to be too hard on salespeople, we find that most people go into CRM, they look at what a salesperson promised and then what a service person has to deliver, and sometimes that is not an alignment. So CRM can be a really great tool for us to understand what is it that we are accountable to the customer for, and to meet those obligations. And like I said, other components like knowledge are very important, because maybe it's not that we don't have the ability to be accountable to the customer. Sometimes we don't have the skill. And so knowledge bases in CRM are great tools to keep track of what the customer needs to know to maintain their relationship with us, and not only deliver that knowledge to the customer, but gain that knowledge ourselves. In the beginning of the presentation, I talked about definition, and I brought up a very important word, and that's equity. What I mean by that is that sometimes when you enter into a relationship with a client, part of the accountability is on them, and then part of that accountability is on you. Sometimes it is okay to give customers the knowledge they need for them to use your product and service. And sometimes it is you that needs to gain that skill to stay accountable to that promise. So CRM systems do a really good job of not only helping people internally to gain the skills they need to meet the needs of the customer, but it also allows us to give that knowledge and put it into external databases and knowledge bases that the customer can use to take accountability for their own relationship success. And lastly, we have probably my favorite, and I hope that it doesn't have to be explained, which is the transparency element of CRM. What is this? Well, you may say that the most important thing in customer relationship and the most important thing that you should be managing in CRM is whether or not a customer trusts us or not. Right before I got on this call, I was talking to a gentleman who was sharing with me that one of their largest clients just canceled a $500,000 order because they went online and a price and the description of that price didn't match. And it created the appearance that the company was not being forthcoming or transparent with them. The result of the lack of transparency was lack of trust, or maybe feeling that there may be some dishonesty or misalignment. CRM is a great tool to show you where those misalignments may be happening, because it is lack of transparency that results in lack of trust. So remember that. Don't ask a company to trust you when you haven't really aligned and met their expectations for transparency in different areas of your company. So those three things specifically: accountability, knowledge, and transparency. How does that work in CRM? Well, this one is probably a little bit more challenging because we're talking about insight within your communications interactions with customers. And it is here where tools like customer insights or engagement insights and CDP could be great tools to help you understand whether or not you are meeting the accountability, knowledge, and transparency and trust expectations of your customers. CRM can give you insight based on the expectations of the customer as to whether or not you're meeting those things. And even better than that, you can leverage CRM to then take action on any problems with accountability, knowledge, and transparency that you may have detected or you may have found. Same thing is true, by the way, with experience. I mentioned earlier that when we say customer experience, we're looking for instances in the customer journey where they feel that something was not as effective as it should have been, or as functional or easy or accessible as should have been. Maybe it was not as enjoyable as should have been, or maybe it didn't have the emotional context that that person expected in interacting with your company or using your products and services. Well, guess what? Once again, CRM does give us tools that allow us to gather and access information across different sources of data, across different platforms where the customer experience is taking place, allows us to grab information from that channel and make an evaluation as to whether or not we are meeting the customer experience expectations of our customers. As a matter of fact, CDP can be a really great place for you to elevate insights into CRM about all of those 7 things within the management of relationships. In fact, CDP can give you dashboards to show you whether or not customers feel that you're delivering on the value you promise, whether or not it's aligned with their cultural differences, with their organizational cultural differences, whether or not it is aligned with the level of engagement they expect. Email is a great example of that. We think that sending people email is engagement. That is not true. It's just communications, and it may be more than the customer expected. What does the data say about whether or not that customer really wants that level of engagement or not? More, less, or in between. Same thing with accountability, like I said, insight into the meeting the promise, having the knowledge, giving the knowledge, being transparent about our products, services, offerings, and of course the customer experience are all things that CRM should be managing only if you really are managing customer relationships in your CRM system. So, are you managing customer relationships? Think about that. Put your comments on the chat. Go back to the way that you're doing things today. Think for a minute about the term. Think about the history of those terms. Think about the fact that we have over the years kind of just touched each of those elements of relationship management, and we've yet to centralize them into the even more important concept of customer relationship management. Do you have a customer relationship management system today in place? Is it managing customer relationships? Because you should only call it customer relationship management if you mean it. I hope that was helpful. We'll answer some questions. I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about this relationship thing that we're hoping to manage and transform our companies through using customer relationship technology.